very briefly. So just to let you guys know who's facilitating this meeting right now, I'm Ellen Brunderman. I'm there on your right. If you're looking at the screen, I'm the Director of Community Building at Park Pride. I will be talking a lot and trying to keep us on track as much as I can. And also facilitating with us tonight is Kayla. Kayla, do you want to introduce yourself really quickly?
Hi, it's Kayla. How are all of you?
You might still be on mute.
Oh, manning the controls.
Yes, so Kayla is bravely managing the Zoom controls tonight. So if you have any trouble with using Zoom or any kind of technical difficulties, you're welcome to reach out to her through the chat. You can change the recipient in the to line and send a direct message to Kayla if you're having any trouble. You're also welcome to reach out to me as well. If between the two of us, we need to help you out, we will do the best we can. So we're the Friends of the Park program team at Park Pride. You can contact us at friends@parkpride.org, which you'll see at the bottom of your screen if you are joining us on the app or online. So also with us tonight from Park Pride, who you'll hear from a little bit later, is Adriana Garcia, who is our nature accessibility advocate. And of course, the theme of this meeting today is the Nature for All initiative, and nature in general, access to nature, the benefits of nature. So we're going to hear more from her a little bit later on. Kayla, feel free to switch the slide at any point. All right, so very briefly, you're probably Zoom pros by now, but just in case, wanted to go over the control bar here. Again, you can use that chat to introduce yourself. You'll see the little speech bubble icon on your control bar. You may need to move your mouse or touch your screen if you're on a touch screen to make that show up. It'll disappear if you're inactive. So use the chat to introduce yourself. If you have questions at any point, feel free to put them in there. We will have open time for discussion and question and answer later. But that helps us keep a log of what questions are raised, so feel free to do that. And if you have anything to share, we will have time for that later as well. But you can put links and things like that in there so that everyone can see. And again, Kayla's managing the controls, so if you have any trouble, use that chat feature to reach out to her. So just to review kind of what we're gonna go over, how this meeting's gonna go tonight. We'll hear from our co-hosts, West Atlanta Watershed Alliance. We're really happy to have them here. Anna Marie and Nataki will talk a little bit about what they do. Then we'll hear from Anna Marie a little more in depth about their virtual education programming, which is very exciting. And then again, we'll hear about the Nature for All initiative from Adriana Garcia with Park Pride. We'll have some discussion, question and answer, and then we'll give you a couple updates from Park Pride and see if WAWA has any updates for you. And then we'll have time for everybody else on the phone and on Zoom to give us some announcements from their groups and their organizations. And then we'll get you on your way as close to 7:30 as possible. All right. So, Kayla, take us to the next slide. I think this is where we do our poll. There we go. So before we hear from WAWA, I wanted to see what our poll results looked like. Not surprising, the main category was tree huggers. That's very on trend for this meeting, so very interesting to know. Love it. Thanks for participating, everyone who did that. Love it. All right, so I am going to introduce our co-host, the West Atlanta Watershed Alliance, and joining us from WAWA, as it is affectionately known, are Anna Marie Shreaves and Nataki Osborne-Jelks. So I'm going to let them speak a little bit about, who they are, what WAWA does, and kind of what their roles are. Go ahead.
Okie doke. Thank you so much, Ellen. I'm Nataki Osborne-Jelks, one of the co-founders of WAWA, as well as the board chairperson. And so I'll kind of start off and then I'll pass it on to Anna Marie to talk specifically about our environmental education work and how we have shifted and pivoted a little bit in terms of that work in the midst of COVID-19 pandemic. But the West Atlanta Watershed Alliance is a community-based organization that works in 3 watersheds in West Atlanta, the Proctor, Utoy, and Sandy Creek watersheds. We really got our start on the heels of a community struggle to try to eliminate combined sewers in the Utoy Creek watershed in Southwest Atlanta. And a lot of our community elders were really successful in pushing forward sort of a community plan for how the city of Atlanta dealt with some of its wastewater treatment practices that resulted in the city really abandoning a plan to build a mini wastewater treatment plant, that would have gone into John A. White Park. John A. White Park is now a golf course, so that's a whole nother conversation, but there is not raw untreated sewage that flows through the park, and so that was a huge community victory. On the heels of that battle and a few others that dealt with wastewater treatment issues, a lot of our community residents and elders in these 3 watersheds decided that it would be helpful for us to come up with an organization that would not only react to projects that we deem to be negative for our community, but also have an organization that would put forward sort of a positive vision for what we'd like West Atlanta, both Northwest and Southwest Atlanta, to be. And so we have been working ever since. Kind of 20 years later, we're still working to try to grow a cleaner, greener, healthier, and more sustainable West Atlanta. Our work in recent years has definitely, taken root with a lot of focus on the Proctor Creek watershed and trying to revitalize Proctor Creek as a resource that people have historically valued as a place where, kids played, people swam and fished, and where people actually used to be baptized. But we're also working in the other 2 watersheds, and I guess in terms of what we'll talk about tonight, we'll talk a lot about our environmental education work that primarily takes place at the Outdoor Activity Center, which is a 26-acre urban forest and nature preserve on the city's parks inventory. WAWA has had a memorandum of understanding with the city of Atlanta for the past, I kind of lose track, I want to say about 12 years that we've been in an MOU with the city to open that facility up to the community. Before our MOU, there was a time at which the OAC was closed and was not serving as a resource to the public at all. We also work very closely with the Parks Department, as well as a newly kind of reconstituted Friends of Cascade Springs group with the Cascade Springs Nature Preserve, which is about 135 acres, and then the Lionel Hampton Beecher Hills Preserve, which is a little bit under 200 acres. And we were responsible before we even became a nonprofit organization, just as a group of community volunteers, under WAWA's name, we were able to raise over $2.5 million for the purchase of the Lionel Hampton Beecher Hills property to make sure that it would be saved in perpetuity as green space. So through those 3 properties, we called them the Atlanta Children's Forest Network, and through partnerships with agencies like the USDA Forest Service and the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, we've been able to bolster some programs in those 3 spaces that we largely, before we got started, considered to be these, undiscovered, or not undiscovered, but kind of underutilized green jewels in Southwest Atlanta. And so the numbers are growing, the engagement is growing, definitely in the midst of this pandemic. As I, am in and out of these spaces, my daily walks, I'm seeing, more people than I think I want to see in Cascade Springs Nature Preserve, and so many more people in the Hampton Beecher Preserve. So it's really encouraging to see that nature is this kind of, it's a healer, I think, even, in terms of this time. It's a space where people can get out and enjoy and breathe the fresh air and walk with their families. And so that's very positive from our perspective. But what is different, for us also, is that we do a lot of place-based environmental education programs that take place in those 3 spaces, but our home base is the Outdoor Activity Center, which is a space, again, owned by the city of Atlanta, but it's always been, run and operated by a third party. And so we're very fortunate to be that party that is running this space now, and we have some very ambitious goals to improve the infrastructure there on site, to really fundamentally transform the user experience at the Outdoor Activity Center. So we've been working, and we have our heads down on a lot of planning that is moving toward kind of some major capital improvements at the OAC. But also an expansion of the programs there. And we're looking at other models from across the country, like the model of the Urban Ecology Center in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. And we're kind of looking at what we do and also sort of taking the roadmap or the playbook, if you will, of groups like the Urban Ecology Center in Milwaukee to draft, plans that will fundamentally, again, change the user experience and make the OAC a go-to, resource for not only West Atlanta, but all of the city of Atlanta when we talk about, sort of contact with and access to nature. So I'd now like to kind of pass the mic on to Anna Marie Shreaves, who is our Manager of Environmental Education Programs. She started with us back in the fall as an environmental educator, and her role changed earlier this year in February. So she's really just been in her role as the programs manager for our EE programs for a short time, but has been able to do some tremendous work. And we had worked with Anna Marie in the past before she officially became a part of the WAWA family, sort of internally, and have just thought very highly of her work for a number of years around environmental education, around kind of zero waste, education, and a lot of other things. And so she'll talk about the ways that we've had to pivot. Usually this is a very busy time for us in terms of engaging people hands-on in place-based activities at the OAC and at these other properties. And obviously because of the pandemic, we've had to shift and change and do things in a completely different way in terms of that engagement. So I'll stop and pass the mic to Anna Marie.
Thank you, Nataki, for that introduction, and good evening to everyone. I'm grateful to be here to be able to share some of the digital work that we've been doing at West Atlanta Watershed Alliance, which I'll refer to from this point on as WAWA, which is our more common name. But I have been at WAWA for a very short amount of time, particularly in this role. And it's been interesting because I initially started it working on working with some after school sites, such as like YMCAs and Boys and Girls Clubs, to do some work, and completely pivoted probably in less than a month of starting my role into thinking about digital content, what would we do for digital spaces. And so it's been an interesting process. And I do want to apologize. I am outside and my neighbors are just deciding to do home improvement projects. So I hope that it doesn't infringe too much on the audio. So please let me know if I need to speak up or speak more clearly, and I'll do that as well. So I'll go ahead and share my screen just so I can kind of give a little bit of information about what it is that we have been working on with WAWA. Okay. So when thinking of content that we wanted to create from the digital perspective, we definitely didn't want to move too far away. Like as Nataki said, a lot of our content has always been very place-based. Not only are we centered in outdoor spaces in West Atlanta, but we also typically have content and activities that are centered around Georgia geography, Georgia's ecosystems, Georgia's watersheds, or even more specifically, Metro Atlanta's ecosystems, watersheds, and environments. And so we wanted to maintain a bit of that in the work that we did. And with that, there were three major principles or values that was important to us when we decided what kind of digital content that we wanted to do. We wanted it to be digital accessibility. We wanted to focus on that. We wanted to focus on sensory-based content, as well as content for the outdoors. So what does that look like? So with digital accessibility, that was important to us. Understanding and minding the homework gap where low income and people of color, particularly Black communities, families or households, have some of the largest percentages of households that lack high internet sources or high internet bandwidth. And so we found that we wanted to do something that was not only accessible, considering that internet is not always accessible, but then also thinking about the limitations on technology and devices inside of a single household, and considering that smartphones may be the most likely device that definitely in the home, and that's still like a problem of, a chance that there are even houses that don't have smartphones, but we wanted to at least do something that could be accessed on smartphones. And so we went with social media platforms and did lives on both Facebook and Instagram. And we did those at the same time. Initially, we responded to, we started to create online content in response to O Academy, which is our spring break camp that we typically have. And considering that we weren't going to be able to be in physical contact with youth, we wanted to think of something that we could do for them. And so we did 1 hour in a 1 hour program once a day for 5 days for the spring break camp. And we did both lives on Facebook and Instagram. That way people could access us either through Instagram or Facebook. And we also just wanted to limit the need to register. I know this typically seems kind of risky for organizations to not want to be able to collect metrics, but I think initially we wanted to kind of give it a try to see how people would take to it and to build up some consistency and repetition so that there could be a level of expectation among the viewers. The next thing we considered was sensory-based activities. So we wanted the activities to engage the senses, whether it was sight, touch. We didn't do much tasting, but definitely sight, touch, and smell, and hearing as well throughout the various programs that we've been able to do. That includes being able to touch soil and put your hands in dirt, which is unconventional, whether it's at home or at school where you get to kind of dig in and intentionally get dirty. The point of the sensory-based education was to invite students to have fun, considering the times of the COVID-19 pandemic. Emotions are very, they're challenged just with all that everyone is being faced with. And so we wanted to consider that and make sure that despite the fact that the students were the youth were spending so much time on screens, whether it was for school or just trying to stay entertained throughout the day, we wanted to give some element of tapping into the physical world. And so we did that by doing sensory-based education. We invited the families to bring some household items. So I have a few here. Today we actually did a demonstration of climate change and how that works. And so something like a thermometer, old bottles that people may keep around their houses, old containers as well. This one's full. It has a little bit of soil in it because we definitely played around in soil. As throughout the program, we did a lot of soil things. And that's also why we encouraged either a shovel, like a hand shovel, or some form of digging equivalent, because we know everybody may not own a shovel or a hand shovel or a large shovel, but maybe they could use something else that they could think of that would help them to dig, because we did a lot of digging. Probably, I've done 9 programs at this point. I would say probably about 5 of them required some digging in the dirt. And so that was a piece of it too, but also thinking that some youth may not be able to access green spaces. So thinking about people that may live in apartment buildings or may live in properties where they can't dig, we had to also think about that as well. So those were some limitations, and we invited people to think creatively about how they could gather those resources. And if they didn't have those resources, we invited them to still participate. Another one I like to have around is a hand lens, which isn't always the most accessible in a home, not necessarily a household item, but it's a good to have. It allows for you to engage those senses, your sight. What are you able to see under a hand lens or a microscope or a magnifying glass that you can't see with the natural eye? So we wanted to encourage that as well. And then the last part about what was important to us when creating our digital content was being outdoors. There's a ton of different science and nature-based content that could be completed inside of the house, but we wanted to make sure that the exercises encourage people to be in outdoor spaces, particularly because right now a lot of us we have to be anchored to our homes for the most part. And so being able to try something outside of the house was important. So all of the activities that we've done have been outdoors, and sometimes that can also mean that we had to reschedule or postpone an event because of rain. And those were also things that we got to talk about in the videos. It was pretty real time. So if it were raining, or if there was a bird making a noise or sound, or if there was maybe a chipmunk that ran past, we would talk about those things and kind of stop and acknowledge those things in the same way we would if we were having environmental education activities on site at the OAC or at one of our other nature-based sites. So that was also important to us. I'm going to stop the screen share for now and then just talk about just some last minute, as mentioned, we did a 5-day nature camp for spring break. And then after that, we had weekly WAWA Wednesdays is what we call them, which were at 1 o'clock, we did live streams on both Instagram and Facebook on Wednesdays. Once again, we wanted to build up some level of repetition with our audience members to kind of expect us at a certain time. And we maintained the lives to just kind of get broad feedback on how we're doing. And so we just finished our last one today. We've done 4 WAWA Wednesdays and the 5 spring break activities. And some of my takeaways so far have been just considering technology in the shifts. I think that a lot of programming is starting to make improvements. I know Zoom has improved a couple times since COVID-19 pandemic has begun. And another case of that would be just today when I started video was that either Facebook or Chrome made an update, and me typically being able to just hop on and get on live was disabled today until I actually updated my extension. So things like that having to consider was important. Another important thing for us, and we're still working on getting more of it, is feedback. I think we're really trying to figure out where to go next as we think about summer camp, and we think about, what is the digital, what is our space and what is our environmental education space in the digital realm? What does that look like? We need feedback. We want feedback from our audience members so that we can consider what their needs are. What are they looking for? Are people overwhelmed by the amount of screen time? Would they rather check out? Are they, in need of entertainment to keep their youth engaged? How would they like to see that content sent to them, presented to them? So these are all things that we're looking forward to. We did put out a survey and we're waiting to gather, responses from that. We're also looking at the the impressions and the insights from Facebook to be able to take away from this and identify what's most important. You know, what's the story that we get to tell about the work that we've done, and yeah, what's most compelling. So I think, you know, looking at the percentage of views that we've gotten is important. Looking at those unique visitors who come back, looking at the people who have shared content. I think what I've found has been interesting is to see the ways or the choices in which people decide to share the videos with which, you know, different types of groups, which are very niche groups. So I'm thinking it encourages me to think about the content and the ways that we provide it and who's interested in it. You know, I think I'm finding that it's not just the students and the youth that are interested in the content. I've definitely got plenty of comments from adults that are just like, I learned so much from this video, so I'm grateful for it. So that's been a takeaway for us as well. And then considering collaborations, I think that's definitely a high priority for us as we move forward in the digital spaces. Getting partners, we have experts from all different types of organizations locally and nationally that we have a chance to partner with and collaborate with on content. So we're looking forward to being able to do that in the future. And other than that, I think it's been important to make it fun. And it's been, for me as an educator, a way to think about the type of content I've been presenting and the ways that I choose to present and how there's space for improvement. You know, I think I would say I feel very comfortable around children, but I think in this digital space, it's a different level of comfort that I'm now learning to adopt to. So it's been a bit of a learning curve in that way, where education is not the same coming through a screen as it is in person. So that has been our digital content and for environmental education with WAWA. And I don't know, Ellen, if I should invite people to ask questions now, if you want to wait.
Yeah, we have a couple minutes if you're comfortable taking questions, and there's already one in the chat from Ansley if you wanted to start there.
Sure. Okay. What was the participation level for WAWA virtual events? Were you happy with the number of attendees? Okay, awesome. So we've gotten, as I mentioned, we've been still trying to look at our views and kind of understand what, you know, is this big or is this small? You know, you see a number and you're like, you know, you can't really gauge, is this meaningful or not? I think that we've seen a range as far as impressions, anywhere between about 500 impressions and about 2,000 impressions. As far as views, and this is per video, as far as views, we've seen anywhere between about 200 and 560 views for videos, and those continue to grow, which means that people are continuously watching them. Engagements also shift. So engagements would be things like likes and shares, and shares, and there's another comment that we get on the videos, and those can also vary anywhere between 11 engagements upward to 150. And I've realized that that depends on how I probe people throughout the video. I may say share in the comments, if you know what type of bug this is. So there's various ways that can be improved to make sure that you're encouraging your visitors or your viewers to watch. So would I say we're happy? I definitely would say we are happy and satisfied with our number of attendees. We had no expectations of what would be the turnaround. I think what we're going to be able to take away from this are the unique views and the long watches and the returns and the people that commented, the people that engaged, the people that shared. Those are people that we really want to zero in on. There's an obvious like or there's some compatibility there, and we know that they appreciate what we're doing, and so they'll be interested in coming back. Okay. Thank you, David Moore, for the comment on being on great work. Thank you. Okay, any other questions? I don't see any more. Thank you, Adriana. I appreciate it so much.
If anyone else
Okay.
has questions, if you're online or on the chat or on the app, feel free to put those in the chat. If you're on the phone, you can raise your hand by pressing *9, and I will call on you if I see your hand raised. And if you'd rather pose your question verbally, if you're joining us on the app or online, you can raise your hand by going to the participants icon in your control bar, and you'll see at the bottom of the participants list, there's a little button that says raise hand, and that will show us that you've raised your hand and I can call on you to speak. And we will have some time later, so if you aren't ready to ask your question yet, or if you think of something else as we've moved on, don't worry, there will be some time to do that. So I'm going to take an uncomfortably long pause and let people think about that. Just imagine the Jeopardy theme song. So while I'm watching for hands being raised, oh,
Shannon has.
Shannon's got her hand raised.
Hey guys, can you hear me? I'm unmuted. I just really wanted to echo. Well, first of all, Anna Marie, I've seen a bit of some of your videos, and they're terrific. So you're doing a great job.
Thank you.
But I wanted to echo. This is not really a question, but wanted to echo what you had said about trying to find our way on this new medium. I know many of us on this call are with groups who are now trying to figure out, suddenly to be video producers and online stars, and these are not things that we were planning on doing. And I think initially we've all been thinking about how can we pivot temporarily, and this is like a Band-Aid and a placeholder. But I think that we all need to start thinking a little bit more about how long we're going to have to be doing this and what that can build up for us moving forward, for our parks, for our organizations, that the things that we build up online, I think people are going to get more accustomed to them and expect them more. And so I think we should be thinking about how do we find ways to invest in some of those skills. We all have done professional development for all sorts of things in the past, but thinking about how do we all learn to be better in engaging with folks in different media platforms, and how do we keep building up all these social media outlets and spaces. So anyway, I just wanted to say what an important thing I think it really is for all of our groups as we figure out how to do parks from inside.
Absolutely. So Renee just asked, what's the best way to check out your videos? Is it to follow you on Instagram? And if you can see the chat, you can see Nataki answered. You can like or follow WAWA on Instagram and Facebook. That's where you can find that content.
Yeah.
So for those on the phone.
And also just to note that if you're on Facebook, if you follow our Facebook page, then you can go back and watch the older videos. For Instagram, it's only there, it's very short-lived. So if you want to be able to check out some of the older ones, you would be able to do that on Facebook.
Awesome. So yeah, if you're looking on the chat, you can now see where to find them on Instagram and on Facebook. So please check them out. And I want to second what Shannon said, that Anna Marie, you're doing a great job already. I learned something today just from hearing you talk. So, and we're certainly trying to do the same and try to pivot some of our programming to be virtual, and we're learning as we go. So it's an interesting time. And I want to thank Nataki as well for talking about WAWA. You guys are a lovely partner of Park Pride. We're happy to be working with you. And so that everyone knows, WAWA is, along with Trees Atlanta, a partner on the Nature for All initiative. And I'm going to, Adriana, if you're ready, turn it to you to introduce yourself and talk about that.
Yes, I'm ready. Hey guys, I'm Adriana Garcia. I am the Nature Accessibility Advocate at Park Pride. And Kayla, do you have my slides available?
Give me 1 minute.
Okay, thanks.
There you go.
Thank you. All right, you can go ahead and go to the next slide. All right, so like I said, my name is Adriana Garcia, and I wanted to just give you guys a little bit of background of me before kind of going into what Nature for All initiative is. I don't know, I do know a few of you, but I haven't met all of you. So this will give you an opportunity to kind of get to know me a little bit before we meet in person. Hopefully that'll happen at some point. So I am originally from Chattanooga, Tennessee. I grew up very much playing outside most of my life, camping and hiking, which we didn't call it hiking then. We pretty much just went walking in the woods. That was definitely something I really enjoyed as a child and as a teenager and then as an adult. And so I moved to Atlanta almost 10 years ago. It's actually been like 9.5 years ago, which is insane when I think about it. And I moved here with an ex-boyfriend, which is kind of an interesting story. I won't go into that right now, but that didn't last very long. So I found myself kind of by myself after about 3 or 4 months of living here in Atlanta. I didn't have family. I didn't have any friends. I had just started a new job, and so I was just very much by myself. And so I've always been an active person, so I kind of found myself going to the parks in my neighborhood. I also used to play soccer a lot, and so I was able to find a co-ed soccer league that I got involved in that played at Central Park. I got myself a bike, and I started riding my bike to Old Fourth Ward Park and to all Piedmont Park and all of the parks that were around me at the time. I used to live in the East Side, and that was something that I remember made a huge impact on my life for the very the early 6 months that I lived here. And you know, being able to go to those parks and those green spaces and find some connection when I felt very much alone and isolated. And I many times thought about going back home, but I stuck through it and continued my journey here in Atlanta. And I'm very grateful that I did, because you know, it took me 9.5 years, but I found my position with Park Pride. And that's what brought me to be the nature accessibility advocate here. So I'm going to just go ahead and go over a little bit what the Nature for All initiative is. And Kayla, if you want to go to the next slide. Thank you. So like Ellen had mentioned, this is an initiative that's championed by Park Pride, the West Atlanta Watershed Alliance, and Trees Atlanta. It is funded by the Turner Foundation, which we're grateful for, giving me a job. And this is something that we see that we want to advance the vision of Atlanta with a protected tree canopy and residents with equitable access to an interconnected network of parks, green spaces, urban forests, and trails. So basically, I mean, to me, what that means is that we want everyone in Atlanta, all Atlantans, to be able to have access to all the green spaces in Atlanta. And we want, not only do we want them to have access, but we want them to feel welcome there. And that's something that I am very passionate about. And while I'm here working on this project, this initiative, I'm mainly focusing on the communities of Northwest and Southwest Atlanta neighborhoods. Kayla, do you want to go to the next slide? So why does this initiative deserve your attention? It's pretty simple. I'm not going to read through the whole list that I have, but nature is good for people's health. Most of you being tree huggers know a lot of the benefits that come with going outside. Especially right now, I think we're realizing that social isolation is a real thing, and that going outside and being in the parks and being even in our backyard or front yard or whatever it may be helps us feel better and helps us relax and, takes a little bit of stress away. There's also things like lower blood pressure, improved mood, focus, boosted immune system, improved sleep and energy levels. All of those things are really helpful and make you feel better. So, there's many more benefits. You can find that online, but those are the things I think that are very important to consider right now while we're in this pandemic. And next, it's because everyone deserves access to nature. And going back to what I was saying earlier, this initiative is not just about, these folks, everyone having access to the green spaces. It's everyone here in Atlanta deserves to be able to go to those green spaces and feel welcome and feel safe and feel like they're meant to be there. And the next one is because nature in Atlanta is at risk and must be protected and enhanced. Some of you know, most of you may all know that the city of Atlanta put forth a stated goal of obtaining 50% tree canopy. And that's something that we're still working towards. We are losing trees faster than they're being replaced. And that's something that, we need to be aware of, and we need to make sure that we're doing things that are going to, we're going to protect the trees here. And, urban green spaces, they help improve the water quality by filtering and returning clean water. They're natural spaces where they have benefits for urban ecology and habitat restoration and preservation and biodiversity, all of those things. So it's, as you can see, it's something that definitely deserves your attention. And Kayla, if you want to go to the next slide. So you're probably wondering how we intend on going about this initiative. And this has actually been in place since September. I've been a part of the Park Pride team since then and been working closely with WAWA and with Trees Atlanta to make this happen. Some of the ways that we're going to achieve this is through education, engagement, empowerment, and advocacy. I'm not going to read through the entire list. You can read it yourself. One thing under education I really want to focus on is social media. Like Anne-Marie has talked about, is them having to switch gears and completely focus on social media and getting the audience engaged that way is really what I'm focusing on right now as well. When I started in September, obviously that wasn't the case. I had plans to have events and, get more folks outside and go on walks and different things like that. And it all seems like a dream now, but it's, times change, and we've had to, I've had to switch gears and figure out other ways to engage folks. So I've been relying heavily on Instagram, which is something which is a social media platform I really enjoy. If you're not currently following us, you can follow us at Nature for All ATL, and that's on Instagram and Twitter. I'm not as active on Twitter, but if you follow us, you'll be able to see some of the content that I've been working on. Some of the things I've been working on is doing partnerships with other people in the other nature folks in the Atlanta scene, and I've been trying to stay hyper local with that. I've done a Instagram live with Chris. He's actually the volunteer coordinator at Park Pride, but he also owns a farm over on the west side, and we did kind of a kids activity where we made peanut butter birdhouses and old toilet paper rolls. So that was like kind of a fun activity, and we did a farm tour. So people were able to like virtually tune in and kind of check out the farm without ever even step foot there. So that was fun, and I do hope to continue to make some more of those partnerships and make some more cool content like that. Also, I would even recommend, as a Friends of the Parks group, that if you have the capacity for it, now is a really good time to create your own social media platforms. Definitely this would be something separate of Park Pride, but if it's something you want to do for your Friends of the Park group, I would recommend doing that. I got the okay from Ellen about that. So if you have any questions, you can always reach out to Ellen or Kayla. Or even me if you have questions about using those different platforms. I know I've talked to Pauline from the Jenny Drake Park about that. So we're here when if you need us. So moving on, engagement is obviously really important. Sorry, Kayla, could you go back up real quick? Thanks. Engagement, empowerment, advocacy. I do want to kind of go back a little bit, kind of remember the good old days when we could gather in large groups. Back in January, we had a really great event. It was called Birding and Storytelling with Jason Ward. And for those of you that don't know Jason Ward, he is kind of an up and coming, or I've known him for a while, but I feel like he's just now kind of people are learning about him. But he is a birder that is definitely making a name for himself. And we had him come to Cascade Springs Nature Preserve, and we had a couple other young nature leaders that shared their stories of how they became nature advocates. We had over 45 people show up, and a lot of them had never birded before, and some of them had never been to a Park Pride event. So we're hoping that our next events will be similar, even the virtual ones that I'm actually going to tell you about next. Kayla, do you mind going to the next slide? Thanks. So lastly, these are the next two events that we have coming up. Both of these are going to be virtual. Deep Roots Reconnecting to Nature in Your Backyard is going to focus on the southwest side of Atlanta, specifically the Cascade Heights neighborhood, Adams Park, Hampton Beecher area. We really want to focus in on the old growth forest and the tree canopy that is on this side of town, and really let people know what an asset these trees really are, and give a little education on that, and also go over the tree protection ordinance that is going to affect those trees. So you're welcome to tune in. That's going to be virtual, and these will both be on the Park Pride Facebook if you want to go and check out more information on these. So the next event is going to be a bilingual virtual urban nature walk. Originally, we obviously planned for this to be in person and at Hampton Beecher Nature Preserve. I was really looking forward to this, but obviously can't work out that way. So that's going to be on July 2nd from 12 to 1. You're also welcome, whether you speak Spanish or English, it doesn't matter. You're more than welcome to come to that. We're just going to showcase the park a little bit, and then give a little history and some ecology information on that park. And on both of these events, WAWA and Trees Atlanta will also be involved in that. Kayla, you can go to the next slide. So here's my contact information. Any of you are welcome to reach out to me. My email address is adriana@parkpride.org. And as mentioned before, Instagram, Nature for All ATL, that's where I do most of my content. And then Twitter, Nature for All ATL as well. And I kind of just wanted to close just by telling you guys like how important it is for these green spaces, these parks in Atlanta to be inclusive and welcoming to all people. I had an experience not too long ago, actually like a week ago, and I'm not going to say what park it was, but I went to this park and I didn't really feel welcome. It wasn't the greatest experience. And, you know, I kind of looked around. I didn't really see people that looked like me. I didn't really feel like it was a space that I could bring my family to. So I stayed there for a little while, took some photos, and then I like immediately left. So I just want you to be mindful that, you know, everybody recreates differently in nature. And going back to the poll that we took earlier, as you can see, everybody kind of has a different outlook on what they think of nature is. And so when you're thinking about, you know, what kind of programming and things that you're doing at your park, you know, just think of that, you know, think about other folks and think about different cultures and backgrounds. There's so many, and it's always good to make people feel welcome and feel included. So that's it. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Adriana. So we have a little bit of time if anyone has questions for Adriana. Again, if you're online or on the app, you can raise your hand by going to the participants icon, the two little people, and you'll see raise hand is a button at the bottom of the participants list. If you're on the phone and you want to speak to Adriana, feel free to press *9. That will raise your hand, and we'll see that and call on you. So I will give it a couple minutes, and you're also welcome to type your questions in the chat if you have access to the chat. Not a couple minutes, I'll give it like 20 seconds. So we have a question in the chat. Can Adriana share her email? Yes. Oh, there you go. If you are looking for it, it's in the chat. It's adriana@parkpride.org. One more scan for hands. All right, I don't see any hands. So Kayla, if you can take us back to the Park Pride PowerPoint, I'm going to give a couple quick updates, and then I am really excited to hear from everybody else on the phone and what updates you have for us. And then we'll do quick closing, any kind of final announcements, upcoming events, and then we'll get you on your way.
Working on it. Just wanted to let you know it is
going slow. No worries.
Going slow.
Okay. All right, so just really quickly, Park Pride is encouraging everybody to thank park and recreation workers by sending letters. The details about that are right on our homepage. If you go to www.parkpride.org, you'll see one of the kind of main banner things near the bottom of the page is about thanking your parks and recreation workers. So that's just a letter writing campaign. We understand, of course, that as we've mentioned tonight, you know, parks and green spaces are playing a very important role for everyone right now, even more so than normal. And that does put kind of an extra burden on those frontline employees that are taking care of those spaces. And we want to thank them and recognize their efforts and the risks that they take to keep those spaces open and clean and usable for all of us. So highly encourage you to send some letters either to just the maintenance crew that's in your district, or for those in DeKalb, Brookhaven, and Tucker. Those are just going directly to the Parks Department. So no matter where you are in those jurisdictions, you can send them to the same place. For Atlanta, we have a map where you can find your district, and you can send them a letter, or you can send them to all the districts. That would be lovely. Michael just put in the chat a link to the supporter report article that he wrote that is on this subject. So highly recommend that you read that. It's a quick read, and really, really, really want to thank those workers. So please do that if you can. A quick update on our small change grants. They're rolling through the end of the year, so you can submit your application anytime now. There's no deadline as there used to be. and the awards have been doubled, so you can apply for up to $5,000. If you have questions about that, you can send a message to Kayla and myself at friends@parkpride.org. We can help you with that application if you have any questions. So our community building intern is joining us next week. We're really excited to welcome Marilyn Chen. She's part of the Serve, Learn, Sustain program at Georgia Tech. And that means that for those of you who are friends of the park people, it's annual check-in time. So we will have modified the check-in survey to be shorter. You're welcome. But you should be getting you should be getting an email from Marilyn to invite you to participate in that, and we really encourage you to do that as well. Helps us out a lot, and hopefully it'll help you as well. All right. So now, very interested to hear from those on the phone and those on the Zoom app, what's going on with you, with your groups, with your organizations. So again, we're going to use the hand raise feature, and I will watch, and so will Kayla, to see who's raising their hand, and we'll call on you. So if you're on the phone, that is *9. You can also lower your hand using *9 if you you wanted to lower it, it's just *9 again. For those on the app or online, you go to participants, and at the bottom of that participants list, you'll see raise hand. Okay, I see David Moore has raised his hand. Go ahead, David.
Okay, can everybody hear me?
Yes.
I'm on an ancient Chromebook. Great presentations, everybody. That was fascinating. The more I hear about what's going on in our parks around the city, the better I feel about how we're going to survive all this as a population. Great work, everybody. Yeah, I just wanted to let everybody know that there'll be a press release coming out fairly soon about an east gate at Oakland Cemetery, which we have long been wanting to do to help connect the neighborhoods. I'm a little unstable now. Can you still hear me? Can you hear me now? Okay. About an east gate that'll help connect the Reynoldstown, Cabbagetown neighborhoods to Oakland. So we're excited about that. And I was thinking about Adriana's presentation about accessibility and parks for all. So that's just one more little effort there on the east side of Oakland to kind of get everybody easier access to our park. And of course, that's also made possible through Park Pride. So thank you. But anyway, I just wanted to announce that. Be on the lookout for that. We're excited about what's going on the east side of Oakland.
Thanks, David. That is very exciting. I live really close there, so I will be watching the progress. Ansley, you have your hand up. You're welcome to give us your announcement.
Hi, everybody. I'm Ansley from Woodruff Park in downtown. It's so good to see everybody's faces. Just wanted to share that we just completed a year-long strategic plan process for Woodruff Park, and we actually finished it like right before all of the shutdowns happened, like the week before. So I actually think it's pretty good timing. I'm glad we're not working on that right now. But I'll put a link in the chat. I'd be happy to share it with everybody. In case you're interested, I would ask that you don't like widely disseminate it because we still need to get feedback from a lot of people on it, from stakeholders and the city parks department. And but we're really excited about it. And if anybody has any questions, if you take a look at it, it's really long, just a warning. But if anybody has questions about any of it, I would be more than happy to, chat with you about it. I'm going to put my email here also. And I had a question, which was, do we have any updates about the citywide master plan process, and also any info on the commissioner not being there currently? I just found that out today and was wondering if there's any info why there's an interim commissioner, and if anybody's communicated with the Parks Department recently, and how you've maybe found success communicating with the Parks Department recently.
That's a great question. Michael, do you want to kind of share what you know on that front? I think you might be muted still. Can't hear you. It's connecting to the audio. See if it's
The
trying.
suspense is killing me.
I know. I think a lot of people are wondering the same thing that you are. Michael, you can type in the chat if you want, or I can share what I know, which is not going to be. It's going to be an underwhelming response.
I think he's unmuted, Michael.
Yeah, I think it's more related to his connection. So I don't know if he just dropped off, but anyway, I mean, Ansley, like I said, you're not alone in that. I think the Parks Department is really experiencing a lot of challenges dealing with COVID-19, and even before all this, they were, had capacity problems and were looking for new staff. So
I'm back.
There you go, Michael. All right, take it away.
All right, so a couple of things. I did reach out to Doug Voss before this meeting to see if he could join us, and I did not get a response. I do know that a couple of things with the Parks Department. It is true that the commissioner is on medical leave as it stands, and LaShondra Burks is acting in his stead. So I've heard her referred to as standing in for the commissioner, and I've seen in both CDHS meetings and other places her fulfill that role. I don't believe there's been an official change to her title or anything along those lines. So, but she's basically acting in effect as the interim commissioner as it stands right now. So I think on things that you would need the commissioner to weigh in on, those should go to LaShondra. And I think that's fair enough to say on that front. I don't know if folks have seen the signs that they put into parks recently, but I have noticed that there are the stop signs that are a little more emphatic than the prior signage that was out there that makes clear that playgrounds, pavilions, fields for athletics and things like that, that people should not be playing group sports and things along those lines. And I think those messages in some ways are similar to the Beltline's efforts to escalate their messaging to be a little bit more direct on people who aren't practicing social distancing. So I did want to take a moment to just mention that. That was one of the things I was hoping to have parks share a little bit about their deployment, because I've seen them around in the parks that I've been to, but I'm not sure how widespread they are. And I would be curious if folks know more on that front. I have found that Doug Voss, on more of the day-to-day operational issues, is the person to direct inquiries towards. So I would also encourage you to go down that path. Looking towards the question on the comprehensive plan, I have been on a number of calls as they've been looking at the schedule for that effort, of really moving the prior planned town hall meetings to more of a virtual platform. And we're in the final throes of getting approval on the process for when they're going to be rolling those out. I'm expecting to see things announced early June with some dates moving forward in June for virtual meetings. The work with the design team on the comprehensive plan has been pulling together information on the park's inventory, and there is a robust public engagement effort. A woman, Sabina Kasimova, who has been who is on staff with Park Pride as the engagement person for that effort, and is committed full time to that effort, has been working to get things in play for 2 separate rounds of public engagement that will happen to support comprehensive plan. And that plan will be looking at a 10-year plan for capital investments in parks, as well as looking at the role of nonprofit partners like Park Pride, conservancies, the Friends of the Park groups. There will also be stakeholder meetings and focus groups and things along those lines, all part of that effort. So there'll be more to come on that front. I do want to apologize that we don't have representation here from the City of Atlanta Parks Department, that I was hoping that we would have someone who could join us today. But I do recognize that they've got their hands full dealing with the issues of the pandemic and trying to stay on top of everything that's going on as issues unfold. Does that answer your question, Ansley?
Yeah, it does. And that actually reminds me of one other quick question, which you probably have the answer to, which is the budget, the city budget for next year. Do you have any info about if it's gone up or down as far as the Parks Department? I don't think the budget's been made public yet.
I don't know. I have not seen a budget as it stands. I do. Your question reminds me that I was on some of the different calls recently with a CDHS, which is the committee that the Parks Department reports up through, as well as Atlanta City Council, more related to the Lake Charlotte acquisition. And I saw Shannon Lee's on the call, so maybe she'll say a few words about that. But Carla Smith had at least cautioned folks who were looking at how much of the funding from the Tree Trust Fund needs to cover the acquisition versus the maintenance costs and other things related to it. And there were some questions on whether or not parks could shoulder that burden. And she had at least shared that as we're heading into a recession and looking at some of the revenue challenges for city government, that parks is a likely target. So we haven't seen anything firm on that front, but I think the idea of making sure that park advocates are speaking up for the need for funding for parks maintenance, as well as the employees that are needed. And I see that in some ways fitting into those thank you letters and the appreciation of recognizing our parks employees that are keeping our parks open, tipping trash cans, and making sure that we're not dealing with other public health issues of those parks not getting their basic maintenance needs met. But I anticipate that there will be tough times ahead in making sure that the parks community stands up to push for well-maintained parks. So the Nature for All effort, I think, also goes to the idea of not just having access to nature, access to parks, but making sure we have access to quality, well-maintained parks. And the budget conversations and getting folks to speak out and support for park maintenance will be a need as we move forward. I haven't seen details on that, but we will be sharing those through our e-blast messages to folks, as well as on meetings like this one.
I would just add to that,
Thanks for asking the
Michael,
question.
that I don't know. Can you hear me, Alan? Okay. I would just add to that I think it's going to be really important for park advocates to start thinking about, how are we advocating for parks and making sure that we are talking about the things that are really critically important about these. In fact, there's an article that Ayana, who used to work at Park Pride, shared with me that I'd be happy to share around with the group that really it included a 2020 peer review study and it was all focused on health equity outcomes and, showing how parks are really supporting mental and physical health and how particularly low income and communities of color are most impacted by lack of access and lack of these green spaces, and how that's going to become more and more critically important as we're, the longer we're isolated. So making sure that we're talking about parks in a way that elevates their importance and not just, oh, we need trails or we need playgrounds because they're fun. And yes, we do, but we need these things because they help with high blood pressure and they help with, getting physical exercise and having places of mental respite. So just wanting to make sure everybody's thinking about how we talk about parks when we're thinking about budget cycles, because they are going to get slashed. I mean, I don't have any crystal ball either, but there's no way parks budgets aren't going to be impacted along with every other budget.
That's a great point, Shannon, and something that, hopefully Friends of the Park groups can talk about with each other. Like, how do we message that? What do we say? What do we focus on? How do we advocate in an effective way? So hopefully going forward, we'll have opportunities for you to talk to each other about that. So I'm going to go to Catherine Spillman. She's had her hand up for a while. Catherine, go ahead.
Thanks, Ellen. Thanks to everyone for putting on this meeting. It's been really helpful. I have a comment, a question, and an update on our park. The first comment is for Adriana. I appreciated her comment about, not going to a park and not feeling comfortable. I think we're all exploring new parks. We're exploring new streets and different neighborhoods. And I've felt the same way, where I walked down a street and it felt like I wasn't in that neighborhood. And so I was curious to hear more from her about what her thoughts are on how we could be more inviting to people from outside of our neighborhood so that they feel welcome. So just wanted to hear about that. And then a question from Michael, and that is, with the tree protection ordinance rewrite, where is the city with that? If you could give us an update on what they're doing there. And then finally, an update on the Atlanta Memorial Park. And I apologize, I'm with the Atlanta Memorial Park Conservancy. And this is, I'm looking at Keith and his little square. We, as part of a recent legacy grant that we've almost just completed, and it's been delayed because of some watershed work in the park. One thing that I want Keith and others to do, for those of you that are not as familiar with Atlanta Memorial Park, Peachtree Creek runs right through it. And so we're working actively to activate the creek, to get people to connect with it and to consider it a part of their park and a part of the city. Today I was walking around the park and there are actually 2 kids on a paddleboard and they were paddling down the park. It was really a great thing to see. And where I'm thinking with Keith is that as part of this legacy grant, we just restored part of the stream bank by the Howell Mill Bridge. And, as we think big picture with the Chattahoochee Riverkeeper, we need to clean up all of our creeks and tributaries. And this stream bank restoration project also allows you to get in and out of the creek, access the creek easier. And when I was down by the confluence or where Peachtree Creek dead ends into the Chattahoochee, it's very difficult to get out of the creek at that point, especially when you're carrying loads of bags. So I welcome Keith to come and visit us at Atlanta Memorial Park, see what we've done, because I'd like for us to continue these sort of input and takeout spots that can also restore the stream bank. So maybe I'd either take it back to Michael or Adriana just to comment on my questions before.
I'll comment real quickly on that, just that there is one takeout spot, but you got to know where it is. Maybe we'll try to get an orange cone or something, or a couple of them to place, somehow anchor them down to a place so that people can see that takeout spot right before you get to the river, maybe, a 16th of a mile. But anyway, look forward to visiting and looking at those either kayak or wader boot type of cleanup down the creek.
Great.
I'll take the question
go?
on the tree protection ordinance. Sure. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
So I'll take the question on the tree protection ordinance. Again, at the CDHS meeting, Tim Keene, the planning commissioner, gave a presentation about the department as a whole. And he did share the fact that just as we'd moved into shelter in place, that the tree protection ordinance, they had a public comment period that ended. Park Pride did submit comments and also was in conversation with folks from Trees Atlanta and some other groups in terms of just following the proposed legislation or where things stand. There was supposed to be a public meeting or a city council work session that then was canceled the day before. And Tim on the call earlier this week acknowledged the fact that they were kind of thrown for a loop with the planning department as a whole, but also figuring out how that work session gets rescheduled. They have not put out a date yet, but I think that they're in the process of figuring out the details in terms of moving that conversation forward. So again, I wish I had a more definitive answer, except for to say that we're on the lookout and paying attention, looking at what happens next on that front. The next step is for a city council work session that involves the public in understanding where things stand and also processing the public feedback that was received up to that comment period and reacting to that. So as we see more on that front, we will share that with the larger group. But we haven't heard anything further except for the fact that they had acknowledged that they kind of hit pause in light of COVID-19 and that the next step is that city council work session.
Thanks, Michael.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, I can answer the question that Catherine had just a second ago. So my thoughts on that. I think one thing that you can make sure to do is make sure that you have all different types of folks at the table when you're talking about programming and different park matters. You know, making sure that everyone's represented, so that you know the different backgrounds and different cultures and perspectives are being heard and being presented. I think another cool suggestion, which I would love and I would definitely participate, have some multicultural events at your park. Obviously right now that's not something that we can do, but in the future, you know, holding like a cumbia, you know, dance event or something like that. You know, I've seen that happen at Piedmont Park. And, you know, just the way that people are talking and, you know, making sure that neighbors are invited and neighbors are welcome as well. That's just kind of my perspective on things. I really like Sarah J. Gonzalez Park. If any of you guys have been there, I think that's a really good example of being welcoming and inclusive. They purposefully, the design of the park is very intentional. There's a memorial garden for Edgar Flores, one of Atlanta City cops that was shot and killed on duty, I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong. And they have a garden that's dedicated to him, and all the flowers and the vegetables and fruits are native to Latin America. And there's also soccer goals there. So that I feel like they did a really good job at the design of that park, making sure that it was a space where people could participate in all different types of activities and not just your standard, you know, playground or, you know, just making sure it's open to all different types of people. So definitely recommend checking out that park if you haven't already.
Those are some great suggestions. Thanks so much.
Yeah, and Catherine, I'm glad you asked that question because I think that's hopefully something that we'll get more insight on as we continue the Nature for All initiative, and as especially Adriana is engaging with different communities and different groups of people, we can get some feedback from those people on what would make them feel more comfortable or feel more connected to different public green spaces. So hopefully that's not the end of that discussion. So Pauline, you have your hand up. I want to go to you, and then I want to give Lisa a minute to talk about milkweed plants being available, and then we're going to probably want to wrap it up. So go ahead, Pauline.
Okay, thanks, Ellen. Hello, everyone. At the beginning of this session, I posted a note in the chat room about a survey that I received today, and at that point, I was curious to know if other people had received the survey. And then since hearing from Michael, I want to know if he knows where this survey fits into the planning and the activities of parks and recreation. Anybody else know about the survey? Receive it?
I don't think I've seen that. Michael, do you know? Oh gosh, we can't hear you, Michael. I think there's a connection problem. I don't know if it's something you can type in the chat or not.
If it's some,
I haven't seen Pauline's comment, but I know that there is a statistically valid survey that has a random way that they're planning on reaching out to folks, but I wasn't I wasn't of the understanding that that had been released at this point. So I'm guessing from her comments that that's where she's going, but I'm looking to find her her comment. Is it in the notes
that's
section?
related to activate.
it's posted in the chat. I hope it is. It's supposed to be.
Yeah.
And there was
Is
just
it part of
Activate
ATL?
I beg your pardon.
Was the survey related to Activate ATL?
No, I think the survey was asking what kind, and it may have been more for seniors, what kinds of activities we would like to see during this period when the COVID-19 virus has us operating from home and not going to the center. But it only seemed to have one question.
Right.
Hmm.
Well, actually, that is helpful. Can you hear me again?
I don't know.
Yes. Okay. So I do know that there is a citywide campaign. Can you hear me now? Kayla, am I unmuted?
You are, yes.
You are, Michael. Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Yes.
Okay. So. Yes. So there is a program.
Yes.
There is a campaign called Activate ATL that has had a poll that is available. And my guess is that in addition to putting it on their website, that they're also they're putting it out there through other means. And it had a couple of questions related to, do you feel comfortable in parks? What would make you feel comfortable in parks? And this was all part of an effort by the city has some ways that they're trying to raise dollars for first responders, and also to get involved in the public messaging effort to engage with citizens to make sure that as they look at kind of the path forward, that they're getting feedback from citizens across the board. And so I will put into the chat at least a link to the Activate ATL effort. I'm aware of it, and I do know that there's a couple of questions related to parks, but that's the extent of what I know about Activate ATL.
Got it. Thank you, Michael. So we're right at 7:30, and there are 3 people that I, hope we can hear from. So, if you need to go, please feel free to do that. But Lisa, I wanted to give you a quick chance to talk about milkweed, and then Nataki, I want to hear what you have to say as well.
Hi, everybody. It's Lisa. And by the way, I thought I had closed my screen when I came outside to be on my hammock, so I apologize for carrying you all with me. Well, thank you for giving me a minute to chat. A couple of years ago, I partnered with Chattahoochee Nature Center and South Fork Conservancy to bring forth an education and engagement project in sharing the lifespan of the monarch with retirement communities and elementary schools. We got the milkweed seeds, we sprouted them, we transplanted them into little seed pots, and then for Park Prescription Day, we were able to plant them in parks. This year with COVID, we weren't able to do that, so we pivoted and made the plants available to the public and had 3 weeks of plant sales. And it's been hugely successful. We had about 450 plants, swamp milkweed and butterfly. We have new parks that are planting them. And you saw my question was, would anybody like to have some? I have about 20 swamp milkweed and about 15 butterfly. So if you'd like to have them, I can give them to you gratis if you're planting them in public spaces, or if you wanted to have them for your yard, just reach out to me. I'll put my information in the chat box. And we are going to be we started hosting a Monarch Walk the 3rd Sunday of every month. Of course, that's had to be put on hold so that we could watch the milkweeds grow and learn about where they are in their lifespan. The other thing is that Henning from the Chattahoochee Nature Center had agreed to do a series of lectures for us in communities. And what we are now looking to do is to offer the lectures via Zoom. So maybe he will be a guest lecturer at one of these meetings, but we'll record them and make them available to the public. We want to continue to grow our engagement opportunities and to teach people about the lifespan for the monarch. So. Thank you for giving me a few moments. I didn't expect to speak today. If you'd like to talk with me further, please just reach out. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Lisa. Nataki, go ahead.
Just wanted to make a couple of quick announcements. Just want to also encourage folks to follow WAWA on Facebook and Instagram. In addition to some of the videos, we're also just putting out just a lot of tips and ideas, activities, that people can do, as families or as individuals or what have you, just to connect with nature in your own backyards or to connect, safely in your public green spaces. Also, I wanted to mention that June the 27th would have been the date for our 10th annual Great American Backyard Campout, which is an event that we've been hosting. We've hosted it for 9 years at the Outdoor Activity Center, where we offer people the opportunity to camp, outside under the stars. We, let families borrow tents. We have food and entertainment and lots of fun night hikes and campfires and s'mores. And so obviously we're not going to be able to do that in the same way, at least not at this point. We're hoping to do it later. But we are planning some virtual activities to try to encourage people to get out into their backyards. We also hope to be giving away to some families, tents. So we are raising money to purchase tents that we can give away to families who register to be a part of the virtual activity. So if you're interested in perhaps donating money to purchase tents, or just interested in participating yourselves in doing this with your families, be on the lookout. We don't have information out there yet, but we'll be posting things on our social media feeds as well as through our newsletter, and we'll share with Park Pride and others as well. But that date is June the 27th.
Awesome. Thank you, Nataki. So Kayla, do you mind taking us back? I'm going to close us out with a couple of upcoming dates from Park Pride as well. And then while she's doing that, while Kayla's taking us back to the PowerPoint, Shannon, you had your hand up. I don't know if you wanted to go ahead and talk.
Yeah, sure. I can add something quickly. I put a link in the chat group, but we also have a webinar series that we've been working on. We just hosted our first one, which was in partnership with Park Pride. If you guys can see this amazing drawing behind me, this is the community vision plan for art that's going to be incorporated at Maddie Freeland Park. And the local artist and some folks from the Friends of Group and Park Pride, Andrew White, the landscape architect from Park Pride, presented on this amazing project. The one that's coming up, we have one that's Tuesday, May 19th. That's the one I put in the link, and that one is focused on equitable placemaking and placekeeping. So many of the ideas that were being discussed about how to be more inclusive and thoughtful about the spaces that we're creating. So I encourage you to join that if you can. We're going to have partners from our Parks with Purpose program in Baltimore and North Carolina presenting, but we're going to have lots of other webinars coming up. Many of them will include Park Pride, I promise, because they are one of our closest partners, but we're going to be focused on community art, stewardship, green infrastructure. We've got a series coming up about trauma-informed care and how to use parks therapeutically. So we just hope that you will continue. You can find it on our Facebook page for Parks with Purpose, or anybody at Park Pride can help direct you to those resources as well. Thanks. Oh, and I just wanted to quickly shout out, Michael mentioned the Lake Charlotte Nature Preserve. That is something that the Conservation Fund is very excited about. As many of you know, we were able to secure 216 acres of protected forest for the city of Atlanta. It's going to be our largest protected area of tree canopy in a single swoop. So we definitely are excited about that and hope everyone gets a chance to get out there and check it out.
Thank you, Shannon. That is very exciting news. So just very briefly before we wrap up, I wanted to mention a couple upcoming things from Park Pride. So if you had, and I think some of you have, participated in our peer support calls that we were hosting every Friday for a couple weeks, thank you, first of all, for doing that. And those went really well. I think we got a lot out of those. So we've decided to evolve those into every other week engagements that we're calling green space gatherings, and those are going to be a chance for friends groups to come together casually, a little bit of a social hour in a different time frame. So that's 5:30 to 6:30, so you can sort of end your day with your friends. We'll have topics of conversation, but it's going to be very open and casual, just a chance for you to network with each other, have conversations about different park related topics, and just get some virtual FaceTime with each other. So the first one is Thursday, May 28th, and we hope to see you there. Next month's park meeting, we're going to be on Zoom again. It's going to be Wednesday, June 10th, same time, 6 to 7:30 p.m. Just a reminder, we have rescheduled the Parks and Green Space Conference for Monday, August 17th, and we will be putting out more information about that pretty soon. So please stay tuned, and you can also visit our online calendar, parkpride.org/events, for information about all of these things. So I really want to thank everyone for joining us. Thank you so much. We really love seeing you and hearing from you, and we're going to have more opportunities to do that, but we're always here to hear your ideas. We're always here to support you, so please feel free to reach out to us if you have questions or suggestions for us. And I want to thank WAWA again for co-hosting. Again, they're a wonderful partner of ours and doing awesome work, and it was great to hear from Nataki and Anna Marie about all of the great virtual work that they're doing. I think they're kind of ahead of the curve on that. So thank you again, everyone. I'm going to, unless anyone has final thoughts, and at this point you don't need to raise your hand, you can just jump out there. I'm going to give it, a couple seconds, and then I will adjourn us. And Park Pride,
Lisa can put out her email address.
Yes, she did put that out there.
Oh, did she? Okay, I missed it. Sorry.
And again, we're going to, that's a good point. So we're going to save this chat log and look at it, and anything that was shared that's worth following up with everyone on, we're going to do that. So that will definitely be one of the things we send out in a follow-up email. I'm looking for it, but I can't find it. It was Monarch collaborations@gmail.com. Monarch collaboration. So if you want some milkweed, reach out to Lisa. Again, we'll put that in a follow-up. All right. One last call. Thank you guys for sticking in with us 10 minutes late. I'm going to adjourn us. Thank you and have a good night. Hope to see you soon.
Thank you.